appreciate your plight. I will try to get them right. Mahad Ahmed Hashi asks, what time will it be beginning? It's not like an NFL match, these pay-per-views. There's no exact time. I would say tune in if you're not interested in the boxing undercard, and the undercard will be all boxing matches. Tune in around 11 p.m. The fight itself may not actually start until midnight Eastern, but 11 is probably a good time to tune in. There's going to be a lot of hype on the broadcast. The pay-per-view broadcast starts at 9 o'clock tonight. There's actually going to be some bouts and a pre-show on the Fox network and TSN in Canada starting at 6. The actual pay-per-view, you can order it at home. You can go to the movie theaters. Some Cineplex theaters are offering that venue, and select sports bars, you'll probably pay a cover charge there too. Brian Durand asks, is the belt on the line? This being the ridiculousness of fighting sports and of boxing, Mayweather's actually retired in 2015 as a boxing champion. So when you retire, the belts become vacant, somebody else takes them over. There is no official bout on the line. They are somehow making this a 12-round bout, which is the usual distance for a title fight in boxing. They have created this bespeckled, alligator skin belt to just add to the spectacle and gaudiness of this event. So whoever wins will have bragging rights, we'll have a big fat payday, and we'll have this trinket that has absolutely zero standing with any official recognizing fight, boxing, UFC body. Okay. Gabriel Laval asks how we can watch this fight on Canadian TV. I think we dealt with that, but I'll repeat it. Cineplex theaters, some of them pay-per-view at your home. You are going to pay $100, so invite many friends over to split that cost. And there's probably one or two sports bars in your town showing it. You have to look up online. I think it's being run sort of through the regular UFC channels that present those fights at bars, so look that up. This is a great question, Stephen Rayo. Do you think the fight undermines the credibility of both sports? There invariably are going to be people who say that. I think of this fight as something completely other. It's a spectacle that we haven't really seen. There's been some crossover things before. James Toney, who was faded in the boxing ring, he was once a great champion, went into the cage and took on Randy Couture. Both were over 40. Toney easily got wrestled down and submitted. We've had Muhammad Ali when he was retired against football player Lyle Alzado, who actually threw a lot of punches and kind of bothered Ali a little bit. And we've had Ali against Japanese wrestler Antonio Inoki in 1976, which is a bit of a farcical event. So maybe on a lesser level, we've had some, MMA fighters fight like a club fight, 6-round, 8-round fight. We haven't had anything of this magnitude. I don't think it undermines the credibility. Boxing's actually having a pretty good year by its own standards. It can be a battered and corrupt sport, and they've had 90,000 in Wembley Stadium in Britain, where it's the sport's bigger than ever to watch Anthony Joshua beat Vladimir Klitschko for the heavyweight title in the spring. And even in Las Vegas in 3 weeks, the fight all boxing fans, hardcore boxing fans, are excited about is Gennady Golovkin and Canelo Alvarez. And that's the one they're gearing up for. As far as the UFC, it doesn't undermine their credibility at all, because this is being fought in the boxing ring. So. Hartley B. Singer asks, does it really matter who wins? I think, people, the reason why these odds, the gambling odds, are not what you would expect is that people do seem to think it matters who wins. There's a lot of money being put in smaller bets on McGregor. They want to see how a UFC fighter known for his punching prowess in that sport will look in a boxing ring against a top fighter. I mean, I know what you're getting at. They're both going to the bank here. McGregor is poised to make 9 figures. His previous top payday was like $4 million before pay-per-view receipts. Mayweather is going to make even more than that. But he has something to lose, most people think. I mean, we're always going to consider him, no matter what happens tonight, a top 20 all-time boxer. But if he were to sort of be some kind of shocking upset, obviously that's that's not going to look great for him. He has the type of personality that he will just brush it off on the outside and say he's made a lot of money, he's got nothing to prove. But Nick Gosen asks, who do you think will win? Again, I will save that towards the end. We'll get into that for sure. Darren Lafreniere asks, what do you think of the 4.33 to 1 odds for McGregor to win? To be clear, he's a 4 to 6 to 1 underdog, depending where you're looking. And that is incredible. You consider Mayweather's last fight in the ring against Andre Berto, who's an accomplished fighter. The odds were about 20 to 1. And they're only 4 to 1 for a guy who hasn't fought a pro fight. So that really reflects the mystery of it. And I get it, you can bet $20, $50 and make a decent chunk of change. I think mystery is helping him so much here. If he had 3 or 4 boxing matches, we'd seen what he brings to the table. And those odds, I don't even know if the odds would be offered in Vegas. So the odds are too low, but they may shift even in these last hours. We are hearing of bets. The average bet on Mayweather is $9,000 because you have to bet a lot to make a little, and we're hearing even of 6-figure bets from big shots in Wales. Richard Croft asks, if Mayweather loses, will it be the end of his career? Well, again, he's coming out of a 2-year retirement, and he's 40 years old. I don't think I mentioned that earlier. He says for sure this is his last fight. And I'm inclined to believe him. We thought he was retired 2 years ago, and he certainly wasn't coming out of retirement to fight somebody like an Errol Spence or a Terrence Crawford. These are guys who have risen in boxing in the 2 years since his absence. He's a canny businessman. He found a way to make this whopping sum against a guy who doesn't have a lot of boxing experience. So win, lose, or draw, he says it's his last fight. But I guess if he were to lose in shocking fashion, maybe he presses for another lucrative rematch or he tries to end on a winning note, but we'll see about that. Derek Maude, I'm not worried about who wins. I want to know which Buffer is announcing. He's referring to Michael Buffer, has been a longtime boxing announcer for over 30 years. I actually saw him announce a fight in Buffalo in 1984. Let's get ready to rumble. He has trademarked that phrase. His brother, Bruce, is the UFC or MMA kind of go-to guy. I actually don't have an answer to that question other than to say I know it's not Michael Buffer because he's sort of said some things on Twitter about this bout that weren't kind. My feeling is that it's probably Jimmy Lennon because this is being promoted through Showtime, a division of CBS. Jimmy Lennon does a lot of the announcing on those fights. I don't have the 100% answer for you. That's my guess, though. Mario Ballantyne asks, what will MMA boxing historians say about this in the coming years? I'm not sure that the learned, boxing writers, MMA writers, will have much to say about this other than looking back on it as an intriguing and amusing event. No doubt there's going to be a fraction of sort of the bloggers, the fans who are going to see this as some kind of referendum depending on the result, especially if the MMA guy were to win. You'd see some saying, well, what's the point of boxing then? But in the end, I think this will be seen as, wow, that really happened. They made all this money for this event. Jerome Williams Tondo, depending on which fighter wins, do you think it will make one sport more dominant than the other? Again, I think it's worth looking at this as an exceptional circumstance. These guys have sort of, Mayweather's always had a history, for whatever reason, in interviews and online, of jousting, sniping at some MMA figures, Dana White, Ronda Rousey. And when Conor McGregor came to prominence in the UFC, he sort of took up that mantle, and they've both whipped it up into such a thing here that they're going to make all this money, and they've somehow convinced the state commission to let this bout happen. So I don't think you can say one sport is dominant than the other. They're entirely different. I think if Mayweather to lose, boxing guys would say he's coming out of 2 years retirement. Yeah, he was one of the all-time greats. Let's see McGregor against Golovkin or Alvarez, the guys that I've mentioned. You also have to take into consideration why people take up this sport. A lot of times with boxing, they're trying to escape something. There's some socioeconomic conditions that can happen. It's a global sport a little bit more than the UFC is. You know, if you were really good at boxing, you can make at the pinnacle of the sport more money than in UFC. So why would you take on the grappling and the kicking? Why would you put up with that? Most people wouldn't. What's the payout? We don't know exactly, Sam. It sounds like the guarantee, the minimum is $100 million for Mayweather before they even start tallying up the live gate receipts and the pay-per-view, and $75 million for McGregor. Now, I think the low-end estimate I've seen pay-per-view numbers would be $3 million. Mayweather Pacquiao did like four and change, maybe 4.5. So depending where that all falls, you're looking at I've seen some numbers about 200s, for Mayweather, and about 120, 100 for McGregor. It's obscene money, no doubt about it. Darren Lafreniere is back. Thanks, Darren. It looked like McGregor got under Mayweather's skin at the weigh-in. Chris, what are your thoughts on the weigh-ins? The weigh-ins are spectacle. They're theater. I actually, didn't expect much from the weigh-in yesterday, because sometimes it's more subdued. They're drying out. They're, just looking to get rehydrated again. The trash talk, they had 4 promotional dates, including in Toronto in July for the trash talk. But McGregor upped the antics there. That's entirely subjective, whether you think he got under Mayweather's skin. I didn't see Mayweather really reacting too much. So whether you think that's because he got psyched out or because he's supremely confident and it meant nothing to him, I'll let you decide that. I don't think he's too bothered by it. How much does this fight help Davis and Mayweather's promotion, asks Mark Vincent. I think you're referring to, on the undercard, Gervonta Davis, rising star in boxing, and it can only help his profile being seen on this level, even if a lot of the fans are MMA types who may not sort of ever get back to boxing. The interesting thing, one of the interesting things about Davis is why he's an exciting undefeated prospect, but he also, if you've ever watched years ago The Wire on HBO, one of the subplots involved a boxing gym trying to keep troubled kids off the street, and he actually comes from that gym and that character, the inspiration for that character in that setting. You mentioned Mayweather's promotion. He's really taken the reins in his career and is involved in these bouts. So he's making money as a fighter, and also his business, his promotional company is making money here. Rick Hocko, does McGregor have any chance of winning this bout? Oh, we'll take this on now. It's less of a prediction than sort of figuring out how he's going to do this. I would say the chances are very slim, some of the slimmest slim that you've seen. Here's the deal. He cannot outbox Mayweather, who's one of the greatest boxers of all time. So he can't fight any kind of cautious fight. He can't go ahead and march ahead with reckless abandon either, although some people think he should go full bore in the first round or two, give it that shot, and then, he tried his best. I think if he goes in with reckless abandon, Mayweather's just going to be a matador. He's just going to move out of the way, sidestep, duck, counterpunch sharply. What we've seen from McGregor, it doesn't look like his boxing defense is going to be impenetrable. If he's to have any shot at this, he has to be stealth. He has to be not passive, but stealth, I would say. He has to, pick his opportunities. He is a southpaw. That could help, different distances and angles for his punches. I'm not saying that he's got to take this the distance and try and win a decision, but he's got to keep Mayweather off kilter and then set him up for an opportunity to land that one big punch, get his full weight behind it. He will be probably 15 pounds to 20 pounds heavier than Mayweather once the bell rings tonight. The issues there are that Mayweather is hard to hit for even future Hall of Fame boxers. The ones who have hit him hard, he stood up to the test. He was only in really big trouble once in 49 fights that I can see. So that's going to be a test. McGregor might pop him, and Mayweather might just say, yeah, okay, I'm here, and come back with some hard punches. Shane Mosley, the one time I'm mentioning, rocked Mayweather. And then by the end of that round, early into the next round, Mayweather was throwing enough stinging punches back that he completely backed Mosley off and dissuaded him from doing that again, and he waltzed to a decision. Kim Surratt asks, seats aren't sold out yet. Will people tune in last minute? Great question, and I think you're mentioning two different things, and they are two different things. I think this is a made-for-television event, or if you watch in the bar or the theater. You are right. They have overpriced this event in Vegas. They've overestimated the demand, I think, at that price point. And we should mention, August, there's this traditional thinking in recent times, you don't have a big fight, especially in boxing, after Cinco de Mayo to get the Mexican crowd and till after Labor Day. So this fight, August, is not a big fight month. That may have something to do with it, but the price point is what people are focusing on here. There's tickets available on the secondary market for far less than what they were running. I think the low end ticket when they announced the fight was starting at close to $1,000, maybe $800, and up to 20-odd thousand. So, but I think you're still going to see, if not a sellout in the arena, close to a sellout. But they're making their bank on TV and pay-per-view here. I think this is still Kim wanting to know, this is a general question. Can you stream the fight online somewhere? I'm not sure. I know Rogers has the pay-per-view rights in Canada. Whether that includes streaming, I don't know. I think I know where a lot of you people are going, and I will say if you were a tech reporter, a tech expert, this would be something interesting to follow. I'm not going to encourage anyone to do this, but we know that in the past people have, put Periscope to their TV sets for fights, and other people have watched. We know that Reddit has people throw up illegal stream sites on Reddit. And I'm also looking, and this is not about streams, but Twitter. What's going to happen tonight? Is this going to bury Twitter? These UFC and boxing, these big fights are pretty popular on Twitter. So to see how it ranks in sort of popularity on Twitter will be interesting. Jeff Tomlinson asks, how can they compare Mayweather to Marciano's undefeated record? McGregor is not a boxer. Jeff, I'm in a complete agreement with you. I will give background to others who are not familiar. Rocky Marciano retired as heavyweight champion in the 50s with a 49-0 mark. Now, this, in recent times, has come to mean for some, not for all, this hallowed mark. I think in large part because Larry Holmes in the 80s tried to surpass it, and in his 49th fight, he lost to Michael Spinks in an upset, got extremely pissed off, made some comments that Marciano's family did not appreciate. But it's really an artificial mark. Some would point to the fact there was a fighter named Ricardo Lopez, finished like 51-0-1. Although personally I thought he sort of lost a fight against Rosendo Alvarez, but officially he's 51-0-1. So yes, if Mayweather wins tonight, the official record, he can brag and crow about being 50-0, and if he retires, that's a nice even number. It surpasses Marciano's fight total by 1. But a lot of the boxing, hardcore guys, historians, are, like you, Jeff, going to throw that big asterisk. Okay, let me get to a faster pace here, although I am just going to get back to where I was. Kim Surratt, another great question. Kim, do you see more fights or fighters crossing over for super fights? Again, these two guys have had the clout to make this fight happen. Nevada State Athletic Commission says it's an exception. Although some of the reasoning is really strange. They say, McGregor's 29. He's 11 years younger than Floyd. Well, chronological, superficial age has nothing to do with how good someone could be in boxing. Bernard Hopkins won a fight against a real good boxer at the age of like 50. And they're also saying, McGregor will be the physically bigger man by the time they step in the ring, which is also a weird thing because you're encouraging guys to rehydrate. Honing in on your question, one or two times in the future, perhaps this will happen, but I'm not really seeing the motivation for boxers to go into the octagon. You'll probably get embarrassed. You've got to learn a couple other disciplines that are really vicious. Denise Corrington asks, could you explain what making weight means? Yes, this bout is being fought at an official weight at 154 pounds, So you have to get yourself on the day of the weigh-in, which was yesterday, under 154 pounds. Mayweather was well under 149, and McGregor was about 153. But again, different guys have different propensity for putting on weight. Some want to put on a lot of weight after, in the day between the weigh-in and the fight, and others don't. Historical context, boxing used to have same-day weigh-ins, but the thought was that this was jeopardizing safety because, you weigh in the morning and 12 hours or so later you're fighting. Maybe the fighters aren't replenished, they're not at 100%. Boxing, of course, has had its share of serious traumatic brain injuries and fatalities. But again, weighing in the day before a fight also brings its own challenges. We've seen instances, we saw a lawsuit because one guy ended up being 25 pounds heavier than the other guy, even though they were about 140 pounds when they weighed in the day before. Jerome Williamson, do you think Mayweather will be more aggressive, or will people see the traditional pop and run? I take a little bit of issue with your question in the sense that in the latter part of his career, Mayweather has not been an exciting fighter. Total agreement there. But the pop and run, I'm not sure where people get this running impression with Mayweather. They conflate boring with running. He's actually in the so-called pocket, not directly in front of the guy, but in the range, and then he moves out of range. He often fights with his back against the ropes. Again, you can punch at him. It's just a matter of he contorts his body, twists his body, keeps his chin tucked beneath his shoulder. If you're going to make contact, you're probably hitting his gloves, his elbows. You're not landing a lot of headshots. So he's an acquired taste in the latter half of his career. The first half, when he was fighting at more natural weights, he was a dynamic fighter. He had some sensational combinations and knockouts. I do think he will be a little bit more forceful if he sees that McGregor has a porous defense and leaves a lot of openings, because he can both, he can throw those counter punches while protecting himself well. Dan Casey, prediction, how many rounds? Without saying who the winner is, I think we're looking at about 5 or 6 rounds. Wong line, will McGregor use MMA-style kickboxing during this? He is not allowed to use any of that. It's boxing rules, but your question brings up a great segue. Apparently there are significant, into the millions, penalties if he were to pull some kind of stunt. You can be cynical and say even when they took that money away, it would be greater than his MMA purse. I would say a couple of things. First of all, to get disqualified in boxing, it would really take a lot. Even if he elbowed Mayweather in the face, they're just going to take a point or two off. They're not going to disqualify him immediately. It would have to take something dramatic. And from what I've seen of McGregor, I mean, he's in a no-lose position here. And in the times that he's lost in MMA, he's just dusted himself off, incredible self-will, and gotten bigger and better. So I don't see the impetus for him or the attitude that he's going to do something like that. Craig Canning, how do you think the two counterpunchers will interact early on? Great question, because it brings up the fact that, McGregor's instinctual stance in the MMA will do him no good in boxing. So he's got the stance is too wide for a boxing ring. In the MMA, you're guarding against kicks and takedown attempts. So he's got to get to some kind of instinctual stance there for setting up his punches. And each guy's most powerful hand is right opposite each other. So with McGregor, it's the left. He threw just a textbook left against Jose Aldo. But Aldo also was drawn in and ran into that punch. I'm not sure Mayweather will. Mayweather's most powerful shot is the stinging right hand. So all things equal, Mayweather's a lot quicker. So he would get his punches in earlier. So that makes footwork more important and angles for McGregor. We talk so much about boxing, most fans are watching the punches to the head, but the key to the fight here may be the feet work. Can he get his southpaw stance outside of Mayweather's feet and find advantageous angles? Okay. Brian Dibble, why won't anyone respect Conor's knockout power? He has dominated UFC, where you have to be prepared for all types of attacks, not just punches. I don't think it's a question. Everybody respects his knockout power in the UFC, but he's facing UFC fighters. He hasn't tested his power against boxers. We're not getting reports out of his camp that he's bouncing guys up and down off the canvas. Yes, they use, puffier, heavier gloves in sparring. He did maybe knock down Paulie Malignaggi. That's a feather in his cap, but the video shows it was not a devastating knockdown. We'll see. We'll see. He may transfer that power over. It's not a respect for lack of power. It's just you set up your punches differently in boxing than you do in MMA, and there's frequency of punches differs too. There's more jabs in boxing, more body punches in the MMA. One of the guys, more often than that, is bound to start grappling and wrestling when they get that close. Joanne Marie asks, isn't it dangerous for a non-boxer to fight a championship boxer? Aren't they worried McGregor would get badly hurt? Great question, Joanne. And in fact, the Association of Ringside Physicians, these are the doctors that help regulate safety at boxing matches, UFC matches, have come out with an official statement saying this bout should not be sanctioned. The Nevada Commission, again, has said this is a one-off. It's exceptional circumstances. But I think they are aware of this backdrop, this humdrum, of opinion that says that this may not be safe. So I think you're going to see, if it's not McGregor's corner, if they don't care, the referee, Robert Byrd, and the ringside physicians, I think, are going to be really on guard to make sure this doesn't get messy. We'll see what happens. Okay, Max Jerome, will it go 12 rounds? Will CBC host a post-fight wrap-up? I don't think it will go 12 rounds. I think in MMA, McGregor can be so instinctual. And if he's instinctual here in this fight in boxing, he's bound, as often as not to have the wrong instinct because it's not his natural sport, which Floyd will pounce on. So he's got to have a fight plan, whether that's, a fight plan that's predicated on just going full bore in 3 rounds or pacing for the marathon of 12 3-minute rounds. Either way, that's mentally taxing in and of itself when it's not your natural sport, before you even throw into the occasion what Mayweather's doing with his punches, with his looks. So I don't think it's going 12 rounds. CBC will, from my understanding, CBC Sports and CBC News will no doubt pick up the article. The Associated Press will have a wrap-up, and I can assure you, the guys who are doing that fight have been doing boxing matches for years, and they're very competent at breaking down what has happened. Joe asks, if Conor beats Floyd and Canelo beats Triple G, do you see a Conor versus Canelo in the future? Well, we're getting ahead of ourselves. He's referring to this super fight that boxing fans are really looking forward to, Gennady Golovkin from Kazakhstan against Canelo Alvarez, Mexican fighter, middleweights. They're more McGregor's natural size. They're fighting in 3 weeks' time. If Conor were to pull off that shocking upset, I think you have two things there. I mean, you have demand for that from some quarters, but then, boy, he knows, Mayweather is not known in recent years for his punching power. So the danger level of this fight is there. But if he were to take on one of these guys, let me tell you, these guys are close to the prime of their career, if not in their prime, and they are beasts in their own way. I'm not sure, to be honest, even if he beats McGregor, that fight gets sanctioned. Side question, Adam Rogers. Chris, is match fixing still an issue in boxing? It's not like the old-time movies. I mean, I think, there have been sporadic incidents on a club fight level, very rarely where that kind of thing happens. I think the bigger issue with boxing in present day is just judges who are out to lunch. We can never prove that they're corrupt. It's just that we can only say that they're bad at this point. There's no evidence, presented in any of these bad decisions that we've seen that they're corrupt. But that's the big concern. You sort of have these fights that's taking place in one guy's country, and they got to make sure, hopefully, that the judges are, not all from the same country, that they're dispersing them geographically. But even then, that sometimes doesn't help, unfortunately. Boxing is a judge sport. Sometimes there isn't an objective result like other sports. Brad Pope, boxing gloves being used tonight. Might that be a disadvantage for Conor? You've brought up a point, I'm glad you have, because we didn't get to it. Another way that the Nevada Commission has tweaked their rules is at 154 pounds boxing in recent years, you should be fighting with 10-ounce gloves. They have said you can fight with 8-ounce gloves for this fight, which is usually 147 pounds and under. These are for safety reasons. They have this, feeling through research that the lighter the glove, the more the guy can get hurt, especially if he's a smaller guy. People think that's going to make McGregor more comfortable, not less, because in UFC it's, their mittens are 4-ounce gloves. This is closer to that than the 10 is. But it's not a disadvantage for Mayweather either, because all but 3 of his 49 fights, I believe, have been fought with 8-ounce gloves, not 10-ounce gloves. All right, we're going to wrap it up soon. I appreciate your questions. We got 2 or 3 more. Avneet Tour. Do you think McGregor is going to use some MMA moves by accident? Again, referring to an earlier question, I think by accident you might see an elbow. And to be honest, and this happens in boxing too, when 2 boxers are fighting. Sometimes guys try to get the advantage on the inside, pushing it up to the edge as far as they can go without the referee seeing, or with the referee kind of saying, okay, knock it off, not too much of that. So are we going to see an errant elbow in there? Yeah, maybe. Not like an intentional elbow, but on the follow through. Will we see him maybe hit the hip socket, accidentally stray a little bit low? Yeah, why not? It's to his advantage to do that. He's the bigger guy. He's got to get every advantage. It's not his sport. But I don't think we're going to see anything untoward, like a kick or anything like that. Chris Jones asks, why should I care? Because it's only happening once. It's a novelty. Why not enjoy it while it lasts? You're going to see maybe, if there's this huge upset, you're going to see an upset on the magnitude of very few events in sports history. I would put it behind the U.S. Hockey team beating a Russian team that had just stomped NHL All-Stars in 1980, a few months earlier. I would put it behind, Leicester City winning the Premier League, because that takes a whole, entire season. And I would put it slightly behind Buster Douglas, Mike Tyson, because Mike Tyson was in his prime, thought to be invincible, not coming off a 2-year layoff. But so on that side of the ledger, you could see an all-time sports upset. This is less exciting, but you may see, more predictably, an exhibition of great boxing skill from Mayweather. And I believe this is going to be the last question. Mark Maidment asks, how many rounds do you think? I think it's just going to be so tiring for McGregor to think of all the things he has to do. And especially if he tries to, really gun for a knockout in the early going, what is he going to have left if Mayweather's still standing there? I think you're going to look at something between 4 and 8 rounds. I think he's going to be tired. His hands are going to start to fall a little or come apart a little bit more. Mayweather's going to exploit those openings, and it's either going to be a stoppage by accumulation of punches, or, if there's going to be a one-punch knockout for Mayweather, I see that as being to a shot to the body, not a headshot. That could conceivably happen. Any more questions here, guys? I think we're going to wrap it up here. I want to thank you for taking part in this. Boxing doesn't get the spotlight too often, and sometimes it's for the wrong reasons. Some would say tonight's one of those reasons, but millions are going to be watching worldwide, and it's going to be intriguing. I can't guarantee it's going to be entertaining, but it's 2 of the biggest superstars in sport, and you're going to have people rooting as much for one of the guys to lose as for one of the guys to win. So I hope you enjoy the fight. Thanks again for taking part. See ya.